She didn't know his name. In fact, few did. His face remained motionless, pale, almost translucent, as if time had forgotten he still existed. The hospital room was small and stuffy. The light coming through the window barely touched the immaculate white sheet, contrasting with the rigidity of that body that had been sleeping for so long that some already said he had simply given up. But she was there. Every day. The young nurse on duty, always the first to check his heartbeat, adjust his form, organize his medications, gently wipe his forehead with a damp cloth, even without knowing who he was, or who he had been. Because, in some inexplicable way, she felt that he wasn't alone in there. That behind that endless silence, something was screaming. Something was begging. Something was waiting. And that's exactly why you need to watch this video until the end. Because this story, real, unexpected, and completely different from what you're used to seeing here, will change the way you see time, faith, and the people around you. So before you dive in with us into this narrative that reads like a movie script but actually happened, do the following: subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, and like the video, because here we bring you stories that not only move you, they make you see beyond the obvious. And if you enjoy content that grabs you by the soul and takes you away without warning, this is the place for you. Now take a deep breath, and come back with me to that room. Because what was about to happen there would completely transform the lives of two strangers. Her name was Clara. She was 24 years old. She had just graduated, full of dreams and fear, like almost everyone who puts on a lab coat for the first time and finds themselves in a real hospital, with real people, real pain. It wasn't the ideal job. It wasn't the ideal hospital. But it was what she had managed to get after months of handing out resumes, knocking on doors that never opened, and hearing the endless, "We'll call you later." And even there, on that exhausting shift, with long nights and little recognition, Clara did everything with a sparkle in her eyes that few people could maintain. She wasn't the head nurse. Nor was she a veteran shift worker. She was just a girl trying to be useful in a world full of haste. But from the first day she saw room 209, something in her stopped. The patient had been in a coma for over 2 years. No visitors. No known name. Just a code on the chart, a confusing medical history, and a cold prognosis, stable, but with no prospect of improvement. Which basically meant that he could remain that way for another 2 years, or 20. No one knew. But Clara didn't just see a motionless body. She saw a presence. A silence that weighed heavily. A mystery that bothered her. She started bringing flowers to the room. A silly thing. A small vase in the corner of the window. Then she left a small radio playing instrumental music. Just to fill the air. And every morning, she talked to him. Even without a response. Even without knowing if he could hear her. "Good morning, Mr. 209, are you all right today?" She smiled, arranged the pillows, ran her hand through his gray hair with a tenderness that cannot be taught in any college. Her colleagues thought it was strange. Some even laughed. Others said she was too sensitive, that she needed to toughen up, that the hospital was no place to get attached. But she ignored them. Because, deep down, Clara had something that even she didn't quite understand, an instinct that told her that this man was not just anyone. That his silence had a name, a story, a purpose. And she was right. Because what Clara didn't know, and no one there could have imagined, was that this mysterious patient was not just any man. He was, in fact, one of the most successful businessmen in the country. Owner of multiple international businesses, with an accumulated fortune estimated at millions. An investment genius who had suddenly disappeared from the media after a tragic helicopter accident 2 years earlier. Declared missing. Then presumed dead. And now, kept alive by machines, in absolute secrecy, with maximum legal and family protection. But Clara had no idea. She just did what her heart told her to do, take care of him as if he were someone she loved. Every day. Without knowing who he was. Without expecting recognition. Without imagining that with every touch, every whispered word, something inside was stirring. The test said he wasn't responding. But from time to time, his vital signs fluctuated. As if something was fighting. As if, from somewhere deep inside, he could hear that sweet voice saying, "Good morning." And that voice was his only link to reality. His only anchor. Until one day, everything changed. But wait. The most shocking part is yet to come. What's about to happen in this video is something you need to see with your own eyes. Because this story isn't just about a millionaire in a coma. It's about presence. About how small gestures that seem useless can actually completely change someone's destiny. Including yours. So take advantage. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now is the time. You don't want to miss the next stories like this one, which knock us off our feet and remind us of what really matters. Turn on the bell too, because this channel isn't just entertainment. It's a constant reminder that the world is full of twists and turns. And that even a hospital room can be the scene of invisible miracles. Clara didn't expect gratitude. She didn't imagine glory. But on that particular day, when the sun hit the window differently, something inside that room stopped. The heart monitor made a different sound. She didn't know it yet, but something was about to awaken, and when it did, her world would be turned upside down. And you'll watch every second. Because this is just the beginning. At the exact moment Clara finished adjusting the pillows and aligning the heart monitor wires, a different sound echoed for the first time in 2 years in that room. The beep. That same beep that always marked a cold, clinical, routine beat, now it was faster. It wasn't an alarm. It was an almost imperceptible detail for any other professional who wasn't paying attention. But Clara was. She frowned, approached the machine, and looked at the numbers. Heart rate, 89. Before, the average was 74. Oxygen saturation, stable. Breathing, assisted. Nothing major, and yet, everything in her told her that something was happening. She pulled her chair closer to the stretcher and held the man's hand more firmly than usual. "Can you hear me?" she asked, almost as a reflex, without waiting for an answer. But at that moment, his fingers moved. It was minimal. Almost imperceptible. But she saw it. Clara's world froze. For a second, she thought she had imagined it. But her eyes instantly filled with tears. "If you heard me, if it was you who moved your fingers, please do it again," she said, her voice breaking. And then, his fingers moved again. This time, stronger. She jumped up, ran to the door, and screamed for help. Doctors rushed in. The monitor continued to beat faster. A slight tremor in the patient's left eyelid was recorded. The room, once silent, was now filled with voices, questions, and urgent movements. It was the first voluntary motor reaction in years. Clara was moved to the corner. She watched everything with trembling hands. Not out of fear. But because of something she had never felt there before, hope. For the first time, there was movement. A response. Life. In the hours that followed, tests were performed. Doctors smiled at each other, incredulous. The man in room 209 had come out of his vegetative state. His brain activity was intensifying. His reflexes, although slow, were rebuilding. The case, which was already rare, was now becoming a phenomenon. But what no one there said out loud, was the most obvious thing: he was waking up. Slowly, but waking up. Clara couldn't think of anything else. She could hardly sleep. Over the next few days, she spent hours in front of the room. The hospital restricted access. The patient's name was still kept secret. But now there was a new commotion in the corridors. Lawyers. Businessmen. People who didn't seem to fit in a hospital environment, but who now circulated silently around the place. It was on the following Tuesday morning that everything changed for good. She was called by her supervisor. Upon entering the room, she saw a man in a dark suit with a stern expression. He didn't smile. He didn't introduce himself. He just said bluntly, "You are being summoned for a conversation with the lawyer of the patient in room 209. Now. Clara felt her stomach churn. She tried to argue, but no one answered. They just led her to a private room. Inside, there were 2 men and a woman. All dressed as if they had come straight from a high-end office. One of them stood up, extended his hand, and said formally, "Nurse Clara. Pleased to meet you. I am Dr. Enrique Damasceno. I represent the legal interests of Mr. Eduardo Muniz." Clara froze. Eduardo Muniz? The name echoed in her mind like thunder. She had heard that name before. Who hadn't? Billionaire businessman. Owner of holding companies, luxury hotels, investment funds, and even an international network of startups. Presumed dead after a mysterious plane crash. And now, there he was, alive. And she, involved. He woke up today. Not fully, but significantly, said the lawyer. And the first word he uttered was, "Clara." She didn't understand. "What do you mean?" "Clara," she asked, confused. "You," replied the woman next to her, staring at her. "He woke up and called your name. He knows who you are." "But how? How could a man who had been in a coma for 2 years, without knowing where he was, know the name of the nurse who was caring for him? Clara had never formally introduced herself. She never talked about herself. She just cared, talked, smiled. How? That's when the lawyers explained. During the 2 years he was in a coma, Eduardo Muniz maintained some level of consciousness. The doctors called it a state of minimal perception, something extremely rare. And during that time, the only voice he heard every day, the only constant presence, was hers. Clara broke down in tears. It was too much to process. He asked to see you, added the lawyer. And with medical authorization, it can happen today. When she entered the room, the atmosphere was different. The man who had previously looked like a ghost now had color. Movement. His eyes were half open. Weak, but alive. Clara approached cautiously. And for the first time, he tried to smile. "You are real," he murmured with difficulty. The voice that didn't let me die. She couldn't hold back the tears. She took his hand and squeezed it as she always did. And then, in a hoarse voice, he said, "Thank you, Clara. I heard everything." In the days that followed, Clara was forbidden from giving interviews. The media began to surround the hospital as soon as the news leaked out. But the most surreal part was yet to come. Because Eduardo Muniz, now awake and conscious, not only recognized Clara as a key part of his recovery, he also revealed something no one expected. He had rewritten his will months before the accident, but now he wanted to update it again. He included Clara as one of the heirs to one of his companies. "She gave me a second chance. When no one else saw any value in me, she did. Not because she knew who I was, but because she knew who she was. That's worth more than any fortune." The news spread around the world. Clara, the anonymous nurse, was now global headline news. The girl who took care of a stranger, and was transformed by it. But she never did it out of self-interest. She never expected anything in return. She did it because she believed in the invisible. In the impossible. And sometimes, that's what the world needs. But wait. The story doesn't end here. Because when Eduardo Muniz woke up, he revealed secrets that not even the press dares to touch. Documents. Betrayals. Attempted murders. And now, he wants justice. And Clara is not out of this. If you've made it this far, you already know. This story isn't just about a nurse who took care of an unknown patient. It's not just about a billionaire who woke up from a coma. It's about what happens when two completely opposite realities collide at an unlikely moment, and the whole world changes because of it. And that's exactly why, before you continue, you need to subscribe to the channel now. Seriously. Click there. Turn on the bell, leave a like. Because what you're about to hear is the part of the story that doesn't make it into the newspapers. The part that no one has the courage to tell. But here, we tell everything. Including what comes after the happy ending. Eduardo Muniz wasn't just an influential businessman. He was a target. And not by just a few people. Investigators began to move discreetly after the revelation of his return. And based on the fragmented accounts he began to give in the days following his recovery, a dark picture began to emerge. According to Eduardo himself, the helicopter accident that left him in a coma was not an accident. And he remembered details. Voices. Arguments. Forced decisions. What appeared to be just another case of trauma turned, in his words, into an attempt at execution carefully orchestrated by people within his own circle of trust. Business partners. Top executives. Even a family member. All of them with access to contracts, passwords, properties. And all of them, in some way, had benefited immensely from his absence. The legal machine that took over his recovery soon gave way to a full-blown behind-the-scenes investigation. Clara, who until then had been just the emotional caregiver and unexpected heir, was now at the center of a game much bigger than she could have imagined. Because Eduardo didn't just mention her in his will. He named her as the only person he trusted to represent his interests while he remained in rehabilitation. This put Clara at a level of exposure, risk, and power she had never experienced before. And she was being watched. Lawyers began to follow her. Investors sought her out. Newspapers began publishing articles questioning her story. Conspiracy theories emerged saying that she was part of the plan, that she had seduced the Comatose billionaire, that it was all a scam. But Clara didn't give in. She knew who she was. And above all, she knew what she had done, even if the world wanted to twist it all around. Meanwhile, Eduardo fought a silent battle to regain his assets, expose those involved, and re-establish his empire. But he wasn't alone. Clara was by his side. She began attending meetings, hearings, and meetings with investors. She was treated with suspicion by some, respect by others. But what she didn't know was that the biggest blow was yet to come. Because among the documents Eduardo had managed to gather before the accident, there was a dossier. A set of encrypted files, spreadsheets, contracts, and recordings that compromised not only his partners, but politicians, members of public agencies, and international investors. It was the kind of material that couldn't just come to light. The kind of truth that no one wants you to discover. And now, Clara was the only one who knew about these files. Eduardo had entrusted her with the responsibility of deciding what to do with them. Hand them over to the press? The police? Keep them quiet? Use them as a bargaining chip? She didn't answer right away. She was confused, pressured. She was no longer just a nurse, but a key player in a global plot, with the power to destroy fortunes, reputations, and dynasties. She thought about backing down. She thought about running away. But when she looked at Eduardo, still fragile in his wheelchair, his eyes tired but alive, she understood, she couldn't. Not after everything. So Clara did the unthinkable. She called a press conference. In front of the cameras, alongside Eduardo's lawyer and surrounded by journalists from around the world, Clara told her story from beginning to end. She spoke of her routine at the hospital. Of the silence. Of the touches. Of the inexplicable feeling that made her return, day after day, to room 209. And then, she revealed what she knew. The documents. The names. The files. And finally, she said, "I'm not here for money. I'm not here for fame. I'm here because, in a world where everyone pretends not to see, I saw. And now that I know what's behind this silence, I will not be silent." The video went viral in a matter of hours. The scandal was instantaneous. Important names fell. Accounts were frozen. Companies were investigated. Clara was summoned to testify countless times. She received threats. She was harassed. But she never gave in. Eduardo, by her side, followed everything. He knew he had made the right choice. And he knew that this young nurse, who had once held his hand without expecting anything in return, had now changed the course of history. Today, months after the incident, Clara no longer works as a nurse. She heads an institute created by Eduardo to care for coma patients and their families. Its name? Foundation 209. In honor of the room number where it all began. And what about the rest of the documents? There are still undisclosed files. Names that remain in the shadows. And Clara keeps each and every one of them. Because, as she herself said in an interview, some truths have to wait for the right moment to be revealed. And when that moment comes, the world will understand that it all started with a simple gesture, caring for someone that no one else saw. And if you want to know when that moment will come, if you want to follow the next chapters of this unbelievable story, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel now. Don't wait. Turn on the bell, because the next videos will bring not only the unfolding of this story, but others like it, proving that the impossible happens. That the truth comes out. That good sometimes begins in silence. And that the biggest changes in the world happen when no one is looking. Room 209 no longer exists. Today, there is a garden there. Planted by Clara. With a single plaque in the center. The voice you don't hear may be the one that saves you. In the next videos, you'll go behind the scenes at Institute 209. You'll see exclusive testimonials from Eduardo. You'll understand how Clara changed the lives of other people who, like him, were forgotten in a room somewhere. Because this story is not over yet. And you? Will you be here to see the rest?